financial advisory firms in Nigeria, like everyone else, are fully focused on the 2023 elections and what a new administration will mean for the business environment in Africa's largest economy. The clients of those firms also wondering what Nigeria will look like for investments, business opportunities. So what's the strategy? How fluid will it be after new leadership takes over? Who better to talk to us about this than the CEO of an advisory firm, Sanyade Okoli, Alpha African Advisory, joining us. Good morning to you. Good to see you again. Thank you so much for joining us.
Morning.
So yeah, I mean, all eyes on this huge election. I wanted to find out what kind of vibe, what kind of questions are you getting from your clients as to what the environment could look like following following this landmark election?
Let me start with questions. Of course, everybody wants to know who you think is going to win.
Right.
But my perspective, if you speak to 100 people,
yeah,
they've all got different perspectives, and a lot of them speak with such certainty. My personal view is anyone who thinks they can call the elections with certainty, certainly these elections with certainty, are either deceiving themselves or are deceiving others, because I think it's very close to call.
Yeah.
But that is essentially what a lot of clients are asking. But in terms of the vibe, it really depends on which segment of the clientele you're looking at. So we all know that foreign investors, for example, are always cautious in the run-up to elections, especially elections where you are certain that there is going to be transition. So they hold off making any new investments for a period of time until the elections happen, the new government comes in, and they have greater certainty as to the direction the government is going to take. If you're looking at clients who have long-term projects, they're taking a long-term view and just think, I'm here, if I'm trying to build a factory or whatever, I'm here, I'm in Nigeria. The general view is cautious optimism, expecting that with either one of the top three, the front runners, that they expect to see more economic activity and less certainty vis-a-vis key areas like the FX rate, et cetera, et cetera. So they just think, I expect things to pick up from here. But certainly in the last few weeks, most people are just thinking, let's just wait and see.
Right, right. So what kind of advice are you giving your clients? Or what are you telling them?
So again, it would depend on which clientele.
Yeah.
I think I am inclined to understand and agree with the position that the different groups have taken. I too do feel some level of optimism. I expect greater economic activity.
Okay.
I really do. I'm hoping that we've hit a floor. But an area of concern for me, and actually I wrote a piece in This Day on that last week, is government finances. Okay. The revenues are not, the budget deficit for this year that they forecasted is more than the revenue forecasted for the year. And that for me rings huge alarm bells. How are we going to fund the deficit? We're going to borrow. Right. But we're already spending so much of our money on debt service. So that is a concern. But that tells me that government really needs to push hard on driving revenue. And the best way for them to do that is to encourage and create an environment for private sector growth, because through that, they should be able to pay more taxes, they should be able to create more employment, et cetera, et cetera. So I feel that whoever comes in, they have to engage with the private sector. They have to create an enabling environment. Otherwise, I don't even want to think what the alternative will be.
Okay, so on that note, since we're talking about engaging with the private sector, do advisory firms, yours and others in the space, do they look at the candidates' manifestos and say, okay, if he wins, this is what we expect. If he wins, unfortunately, there's no. Well, I think there's only one female candidate. I'm saying he, but if this candidate ABC wins, this is what we expect based on what they've said they will do with the private sector. So do you do any manifesto reviews?
I think your question alone tells me the progress that Nigeria has made in terms of the evolution of its democracy.
Right.
6 months ago, I was having conversations with people and we were talking about manifestos, and the general view was, quote unquote, I beg, who reads manifestos?
Right.
But here we are, I think of the top three, Atiku came out with his 5-point agenda, but it wasn't a manifesto per se. Tinubu puts out something. Atiku thinks, hang on, I'm going back to the drawing board.
Right.
He too comes up with something. Everybody's clamoring, saying, where's Obi's manifesto? The fact that we are talking about manifesto, as I said, I think it's a great step. Absolutely, from each of them, you have a sense of where they say they're going, where the bridge we're yet to cross is truly instilling confidence that what they say they will do, they would, for the best part, as best as possible, do what they've said.
We talked about William Ruto when he came into office, Kenya's new president, and JP Morgan recently announced that they're opening an office in Nairobi. And then Ruto comes out and says, hey, see, that's an example of foreign investors giving us a green light in Kenya. I wanted to get, I know JP Morgan has an office here. I think they have an office in South Africa as well, in Nigeria, South Africa, and so on. But is that what the new administration, whoever comes in, is that what they're hoping for? You mentioned foreign investors in like your first answer. Is that what, that somebody announces some new office coming into Nigeria?
So I'll say one thing first. I look forward to the day where a country's president says, Alpha African has come into my country.
You go.
This is a good sign. So that's the first thing I've got to get out.
Into the universe.
But what I will say is we have to approach such moves with caution. If you read what JP Morgan is saying, they're looking to provide services. They're not looking to deploy capital.
Gotcha.
Okay. So they're saying, we expect to see some financial activity here. And they want a piece of the pie. So it'd be interesting to see what the local financial advisors are saying, because they're thinking, hang on, just, we've gone through the period where we're waiting for this, great day, glory day, and now we have to share with JP Morgan.
We got Nigeria's GDP figures for fourth quarter of last year and full year for 2022. Yeah, there it is. So full year, 3.52 for the fourth quarter. I think full year was 3.01. We also had the top 10 sectors that contributed the most, and I think crop production was the top sector that contributed about 24%, followed by trade was about 15%, and the likes. What do you think when you look at the sectors? I mean, as far as what could be attractive this year?
So I think agriculture has to be attractive. Not least because we all recognize increasingly that food security is a concern. And Nigeria needs to be able to feed itself to a greater extent and be less dependent on imports. The other area, talking about manifestos, is that unemployment rates are in the high 30s, if I remember rightly. We need to create employment. We need something like manufacturing. To really create the jobs. And as I said, we need to produce more. We need to be less import dependent. Right. The tech, if you look over the last few years, the telecoms and information technology sector, that has continued to grow. And
so
I expect
top 10,
I expect to see more growth in that. Trade, yes, especially if we have greater certainty and clarity vis-a-vis the foreign exchange. But having said that, as I said, I'm a huge proponent for import substitution.
Being able to make your stuff at home, what you need power for.
So infrastructure.
There you go.
Huge opportunities, but again, there we need a government that, I'll keep talking about enabling environment. One of the things we've spoken about, and can't remember if any of the manifestos spoke about this, are guarantees, credit guarantees for strategic infrastructure projects. That could move the needle, not just for the infrastructure, but remember the infrastructure is an enabler in itself. So,
There you go. Okay, so this talk on, enabling environment. There's a lot of talk that Nigeria needs to get her act right quickly with the new administration, hit the ground running because of competition for capital. So can you speak to how competitive it is with respect to the African continent, where if there's another environment in another African country that's more enabling than Nigeria, then the capital goes there.
Rotas, I'm so glad you talked about competition for capital, because it suggests that all the things I've been saying on this show over the years, somebody's been hearing me. Absolutely.
I listen to you a lot, just so you know.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But you've got to remember that investors, they're not just looking at returns, they're looking at risk-adjusted returns.
Ah, okay.
So when they're looking at am I going to, first of all, there's finite capital, right?
Yeah.
And capital, as you say, is going to flow to where people think that when I consider the risk associated, and you're looking at country risk, you're looking at sector risk, just at the basic level. When they look at those two big areas, that they'd get the highest returns. And so we're also at a time, especially with the coming out of COVID, the Ukraine-Russia war.
A year today, yeah.
I think it was yesterday's FT, and I was reading about how the UK needs some new injection to enable the economy to stabilize. Yeah. So, whereas in the past, when we're talking about competition, with Nigeria talking about competition for capital, we're looking at other frontier markets or Africa or emerging markets. Now there's truly global competition for capital because more people are in need of inward investment than was the case, say, 10 years ago.
So what kind of, just a final question for you, what kind of body language or actual verbal language do you want to see from new administration once they come in? Hopefully we find out who that is on Monday, but yeah.
So the piece that I mentioned
in this day,
yes. I said, when I'm considering first of all, I don't have a vote, so you know that.
Right. Need to remind people about that.
Is they need to demonstrate that they understand the issues.
Yeah.
And not only do they understand them, they have either ideas of solutions or can have the team who can proffer implementable solutions and can understand those implementable solutions. Then they need to demonstrate political will.
Yeah.
They need to show that, yes, I care, I know their issues, I have the solutions, and I'm willing to get it done and get it done quickly.
Right.
We don't have time to wait for it to take months for ministers. We need competent people being put in positions. And thirdly, they also need to demonstrate that they can navigate the political terrain, because we all understand Nigeria is not an easy country.
Right.
And if you're trying to push something big, you're going against vested interest.
Right.
So you need to be able to show us quite quickly that you have the ability and the force, the courage, the everything, the wisdom to navigate the terrain. That's my perspective.
It all goes down tomorrow. CEO of Alpha African Advisory, which will be opening some offices across the continent and be announced by the respective presidents in those countries in Africa. Sanyade Okoli, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate your insight.